All right, in this lesson, we are going to look at a physics principle or physics phenomenon called Bernoulli's principle. And I'm going to relate it to our conservation of energy idea. And then we're also going to actually explain a little bit more about how and why it happens, which isn't talked about much. Certainly, I wasn't satisfied with just the Bernoulli's principle itself as a student, but it works. And so I've just used it. I used it for ages and ages, and then finally learned more and figured out more about why it actually works. So I'm going to try and share that with you. All right. So first of all, Bernoulli's principle. A nice way to introduce it is to ask someone like, what happens if you blow between two balloons? All right. If you just blow air between two balloons. And so if you're looking at this picture here, I'm just trying to get my video of this or the video. So this person's just going to blow air, two balloons. And a lot of people would think if you just kind of, without even the tube or whatever, you just blow air between them, you'd think they get pushed apart because you're blowing air and it's going to push on the two and push them apart. But watch what actually happens. A puff of air go together. Every time he does a little puff of air, they get drawn together for some reason. And it's the Bernoulli's principle, really, right? So the question is, what happens if you blow between them? They actually end up getting pushed together, and we're going to explain and understand why. Right? A video I did a while back is with pop cans. Oh, it's not recognizing me right now. I'll just go to my own version here. So it's on my YouTube channel, but I'm not apparently logged in properly. Pop cans could come up. This is a colleague of mine, and so he was around after school, and I said, "Hey, can you help me out with something?" And I asked him what would happen if he blows between these two empty Pepsi cans. And they're sitting on straws, so they're free to move. And of course, he was expecting them to go together and watch what happens and watch his reaction. It's awesome. He's like, "Ah, they went together. What?" And then I explained why. So Bernoulli's principle. Well, how it's described, okay, is that if we have an increase in the speed of a fluid, then you're going to have a matching decrease in the pressure. So a decrease in the potential energy, if you will, of the fluid itself, the pressure energy, you can call it. So we have kinetic energy increasing. Okay, so the way the description is going to be is kinetic energy is going to increase because the air forces its way through a restriction, so it has to go faster to fit through and go through. And so you get an increase in the kinetic energy and a corresponding decrease in the pressure energy. So you can think of Bernoulli's principle as an application of the conservation of energy, where you have the total amount of energy remains the same. If the kinetic energy increases because it's passing or going through either by an object or through a restriction, then the kinetic energy would increase. And the potential energy of the fluid would decrease. So kinetic energy increase is corresponding to or has a corresponding pressure energy decrease. So if the velocity of the fluid increases, it matches with a pressure decrease. Okay. So this slide's already filled in. I'll just describe what's going on here. So the current of air going through, follow me here, right? It forces its way through this constricted area. And so it's going to be going faster. We have a faster speed, right? Because it's trying to fit through. And so if we have more kinetic energy, that faster speed, we're going to have less pressure energy. Okay. So we have the total energy is the kinetic energy plus this the pressure energy. I just didn't have it written in there, right? So if you think about, you have normal air pressure all around the balloons, and you have less air pressure in the middle, then we've got normal pressure pushing on the sides, and we've got less pressure pushing out. See those, Liz? See those as green arrows here? I'll show you. Okay, those are arrows pushing out. They're a little hard to see. But yeah, so you're going to have a net force towards the center because you have a big push, normal size air pressure push towards the middle, and only a smaller force because of the Bernoulli's principle towards the sides. All right, so that's the idea of this. It's called the Bernoulli's principle. They get pushed together. This happens. If you had two hot air balloons side by side and a little gust of air went through, they are observed to bonk off of each other. They end up like constantly bonking off each other. I wish I could find a video of that. If you find one, send it to me. The two hot air balloons side by side, and there's a space between, a little gust of wind comes up, and they get pushed together. Okay. So we can use that analysis all the time. Same thing with an airplane wing. When an airplane is going, obviously to the left in this picture, the air is going over relative to it to the right. Right. So the actual motion is the airplane wing, this wing here going to the left. The wind, as a result, is going to the right relative to it. This air travels this distance. This air has to travel farther, right? And so what you think of it as is you have these two air molecules that are, side by side, right? Then they end up side by side again afterwards because of inertia and whatnot, right? So as the airplane wing rips through, relative to the airplane wing, this molecule has to travel a greater distance, right? Relative to the wing, anyways, right? And then this one. And so this greater distance in that same amount of time means that this is higher kinetic energy. So let's say EK is up because of that. And therefore, by Bernoulli's principle, the pressure energy, so EP is down, right? So this is low pressure pushing down all over this wing, whereas you have normal pressure pushing up. This is just normal air pressure. So without air pressure, without atmospheric pressure, airplanes wouldn't be able to fly just with aerodynamic wings like this. It just wouldn't work. Hey, you need normal air pressure pushing around. I don't know if I need anything from this page here, but the idea, we end up with this net force up, right? Because you have normal force on the bottom. I like this arrow here, right? Normal pressure there, smaller pressure because of Bernoulli's principle. And so you have this net force up, and that's your lift force. Okay, so picture the airplane wing, and this is what's going on. Higher kinetic energy above, therefore lower pressure, normal pressure pushing from below. So airplanes are held up by normal air pressure. Airplanes also use little pedostatic tubes, they're called. So the air rushing in, you can get a pressure change, right, because of the movement of the air. And so that pressure change is used to calculate the speed of the airplane. It's just a more efficient way than having like a little propeller that's going to, move in the wind and so on. So this is how Bernoulli's principle is described. It's people usually just talk in terms of this and don't really say why. I used to at least say in terms of conservation of energy, it makes sense, right? Next step up, this is the first time I've actually included this in a grade 11 physics lesson. Next step up is to actually describe, like, how does this happen, right? It's not magic. Like, what is it that's causing the pressure to decrease in a matching way to the increase in the kinetic energy? And so to explain how the heck this actually works, we need to refer back to and remember that we have this kinetic molecular theory of thermal energy, right? Particles bouncing around slowly is low pressure. Faster they're bouncing around, the higher the pressure. Okay, so the more hits of the particles against the wall of the vessel or whatever, the higher the pressure. Okay, so the harder they're hitting the walls, the more pressure there is. So we're going to look at the main reason why this happens then. And so what I've got here is a bunch of air molecules that have random velocities. The purples are just their random velocities. And so picture them smacking in. This one's going to smack into this wall, and this one's going to smack into that wall, and that one's going to smack into that wall, and eventually this one's going to smack into a wall, and so on. Okay. As this gas ends up going into this restricted area, so we're going to have the gas flowing overall this way, right? So we have the flow of the gas. And then in here we have, increased flow. So basically the size of the sideways arrows was the black all the time, right? The black arrows. So I should have just an arrow really actually here. These all had this sideways flow, right? Flow that way. Well, what happens when you go into the restricted area is that sideways flow has to increase, right? It has to go faster. And so if you think about it, that the total energy has to stay the same, right? So these total energy arrows, I'll use my mouse instead here to be more precise. These total energy arrows have to stay the same, right? Well, if I increase the horizontal velocity to be bigger, then you can see this one is going to have to pretty much have its actual energy and velocity pointed almost directly, right? Maybe a slight bit up so that its horizontal component matches the size of the new velocity in that restricted area. So you can see this sideways velocity isn't there anymore, and so this particle is not going to hit the side as hard, or as often, or maybe it doesn't hit it at all, right? So every single one of these has to have an increase in its horizontal velocity, and therefore basically a matching decrease in its vertical velocity. So now we have a mechanism for the actual, right? This one would maybe be about like that, right? And so, the vertical velocity decreased again. This one decreased the most. And all along here, they all do this, right? Every single molecule is going to have a new sort of net velocity direction and a decrease in the vertical as a result. So the result in each case is the vertical components decrease as a result of this, right? So this is going to have to go maybe like that size to have the red arrow line up. I'm just trying to show the idea of it, okay? Yeah, so that vertical components decrease, and so it's going to lead to a decrease in the pressure. Like it's so obvious when you see it in that way, okay? But it's just no one ever talks about it. I had to search and search and search and find some areas that kind of started to talk about it, and then I've never seen actually a description like this before, and I think I think it really works. I almost want to make like a polished YouTube video and put it out there as like to share information that an explanation as to how this really works, because I haven't seen it anywhere, but it certainly makes sense. So this little video here just has the visual of the idea of the atoms bumping around. They kind of miss the mark on the description as to why the pressure drops. They just say like the usual kind of stuff. I don't want to wait for ads, so I'm going to put up the video directly. So atomic scale, maybe I can get away with just typing that. Atomic scale. So I'm not even going to turn the volume on, but basically you have molecules going through a pipe, right? And so you got these bouncing molecules and so on. Eventually, you see the idea of the flow here. And so these ones are going to have to go faster, and as a result, they're not going to bounce into the walls as often. So I'm just using that animation rather than what they were saying. Okay. The possible effect number 2, if you think about the fact that the molecules are moving faster in that region, well, then they're going to be in there for less time, so there's going to be less collisions, and so there's going to be less pressure. The only thing is there's also less volume for them to vibrate in, so I'm not sure that one really checks out. But this one I'm really happy with. And so how's lift created? Well, you could say, since their particles are going faster sideways, then they're going to have a smaller vertical component of the velocity, and in order to have the same net velocity overall, and so there's going to be less energy in the collisions with the top of the wing, and resulting in lower pressure, right? So, and then in the bottom, of course, we have normal velocity, normal pressure, and so on. So we can describe it that way. It's just cumbersome and more complicated, right? So instead, it just is a little bit easier to say, okay, well, here we have molecules. Oh, this is the time one, right? This is the other version. So we have molecules hitting X times per meter, and here we have X times per more than a meter. And so basically just a more surface area, and so less pressure. So that's almost a third description, to be honest. But the standard one is just to say, oh, well, here we have an increase in the kinetic energy, right? And therefore we have a decrease in the pressure energy. That's just the standard pressure or the standard Bernoulli's principle treatment. But it's really just a result that helps you remember what's going to happen. And there certainly are some situations where I questioned it as a student actually as well, where I was like, okay, well, I don't see a restriction here, so how is that working? And so the one that I'm going to just try and find quick here to do with that is, I'm just going to pause quick so I can find the right slide. All right, I was just going off script or plan a little bit here and want to just show you this on the fly here, but this is a demonstration that I found Bernoulli's principle itself with the restriction and increase in speed as a result and leading to a decrease in pressure never really made sense to me. So if you just take a straw and blow on another over top of another straw that's in a glass of water, you can do this with 2 straws easily enough in a glass with some liquid. The fast air over top here will cause a low pressure area. So you have normal pressure pushing on the water here, and it actually pushes towards that low pressure. And so you picture the normal pressure in the water itself pushing up towards that low pressure, and it actually blows liquid out of the straw. Once you get it lined up enough there, it's going to get it done here eventually. There you go. So try it yourself. I normally do this with like more pressurized air, like an air compressor or my vacuum cleaner hooked up backwards and whatnot. But it works, right? You can just do it with two straws, evidently by the video. I haven't tried it that way myself. But so where's the restriction that's causing the decrease in or increase in kinetic energy, therefore a decrease in pressure, right? So because there isn't that restriction, I was never super satisfied with this being an application of Bernoulli's principle. But really, if you put it in terms of the miracle molecules are moving faster, therefore, right, they don't hit that surface as often or that area as often. There's a lower pressure, and they have that higher sideways velocity. Therefore, by definition, a lower vertical component or a component of velocity towards the nozzle and towards the surface of the water, and so on. So you're getting that lower pressure based on the discussion that I carried out. So just to do a quick check here, we are recording, right? Okay, good. So yeah, in the end, an explanation is useful if it allows you to make correct predictions, right? So Bernoulli's principle is usually just stated and just used, and I don't think too many people think further about it, which is a shame, really. It always kind of bugged me that it doesn't, like, what's the reason for this? So it's easier just to focus on the ideas like, oh, it's faster there, okay, so it's going to be lower pressure, right? But the real reason behind it is kind of nice to know. There's a logical reason behind it. So like, how do sailboats sail? Well, the air that goes on this side goes faster because it has to go all the way around versus just going straight across, right? So more kinetic energy, therefore lower pressure energy, right? So you get low pressure on this side, normal pressure on that side. It pushes against the sail and basically pulls the boat forward, right? It tries to pull it sideways a little bit, but on an angle towards the front, and it's got the keel that forces it to just go forward. So yeah, it ends up translating into a component that forces forward, and so it gets pulled forward. So they see the net force here being sort of on an angle, right? But there's a component of it forward. That's how sailboats work. Carburetors in vehicles, very simple, old school, right? You got this Venturi tube, they call it, this restriction. And so it's just like the straw, right? The air, normal air pressure on the top of the carburetor, inside of the carburetor, there's the float. And so normal air pressure pushes here, right? So normal air pressure. And then inside of here, you have less air pressure. So inside of there, again, you've got higher kinetic energy, therefore lower pressure energy, right? We have lower pressure energy. So we've got normal pressure pushing against low pressure. The liquid gets pushed up and out through here, and it just gets sprayed into the engine. It gets atomized, they call it. Just breaks it into tiny little pieces of gasoline, goes into the engine, and it's all mixed up, nice, ready for combustion. There's a 6-pack version of it if there's any Mopar fans. So in this little demonstration here, we've got this tube here that has a restriction area. And you're going to blow air through this, and you're going to see what happens to the pink liquid that's in there, normally sitting at all level, right? And so a lot of people would think that you're forcing air through that spot, and so it's going to be it's going to be higher pressure. It's going to push down, but actually there's going to be higher kinetic energy there, faster, right? Therefore, less pressure. So it actually causes the pressure to rise in that area. The lower pressure. It causes the level of the liquid to rise, right? Because you've got basically pressures all around here, and so this normal pressure area pushes towards that low pressure area. Okay, it's a little demonstration way to do it, and we already talked about that. Another application of this, unbelievably, is the dimples on golf balls. So what are the dimples there for, right? So a golf ball has drag forces on it, and a dimpled ball can cover, close to 300 yards on average. A good golfer can drive like 300 yards. If without the dimples, as good of a golfer as anybody is, they might only be able to make it go like around 140 yards is the test ends up being. And so this was originally discovered by people noticing that scratched up, marked up golf balls actually were driving farther and farther. So no one likes the look of a scratched up, ugly golf ball. And so by trial and error, they designed this dimple pattern to make them travel farther. Well, why do they travel farther? We need to know about vortices, vortex shedding, it's called. So you get smooth flow of liquids called laminar flow. And when it breaks from laminar flow, you get these little vortices, these little eddy currents, they call them, right? And those little eddy currents, you've probably seen this with a paddle in the water in the river, right? Where you get these little funnels, little whirlpools. Those are little eddy currents as well. So you get these little eddy currents behind there, and that's a higher kinetic energy because they're spinning fast. Therefore, there's lower pressure. So you actually get a low pressure region behind things because of vortex shedding. So with a golf ball, if you have smooth laminar flow, it turns out that that breaks away quicker from the surface, leaving a large area of low pressure, large area of eddy currents, therefore higher kinetic energy, therefore low pressure. Whereas if you have dimples, it introduces turbulence to the flow. And the turbulent flow, they don't even know why. It just kind of stays closer to the surface. It doesn't break apart as quick. You can see this in wind tunnel tests. And so the dimpled flow drastically reduces the surface area of this low pressure behind, which you know decreases the difference in the force. Right, so every single pair of normal force and reduced force leads to some net force backwards, some drag force, and so we have way less drag force amounts, and so the ball travels farther. There's just less drag on the thing. Okay, so that's the idea of it that we know about. Just other pictures to do with it. So this one here, I'm just going to show you my new version of this. Let me just pause. Actually, I'll just go to YouTube. It should be uploaded by now. If it's not, I'll have to pause the video. Go to sure. Oh, I'm in Edge by accident. That's why I was like, I need my YouTube link here. Just going to go to my channel, and hopefully it's already uploaded. If not, I'll pause and wait for it. Yeah, there we go. Like just. I recorded this morning. Do a full size video here. Notice that you can change the word shorts to watch, and it just becomes a full screen video. Which is the way I can just sort of control it better. But anyway, so if I go full screen now, so I normally use, there's a soundtrack to this, but I'll just talk about it. So I normally use an electric leaf blower in class, but I couldn't find it this morning in my shed, in my garage. I looked everywhere. So I went to the head custodian at my school and borrowed a gas leaf blower. So I decided to do this outside so I didn't gas the school out. But it's a Bernoulli principle demonstration. So I get the leaf blower started, and then what's going to happen if I have the ball above the leaf blower? Like I set it, like I could back up just a hair here, right? Had the ball set there, and I turned the leaf blower on. You saw that it was pushing it up, obviously, right? Most people would think the ball would just go like up and then fall down, right? Which it does, I think, the first time, but then the second time I managed to get it figured out here. This is the second try. So that ball ends up balancing there quite nicely. And not only that, I can move it sideways. So how the heck, right? Not working. Because it's all like over top of nothing at that point. Like there's a good spot to freeze frame here. So how this works is you've got air rushing towards this ball, and obviously gravity's trying to pull the ball down, and so it's going to move down in that airstream. So lots of air is going to go above the ball. Well, the air that goes above the ball and around is going to travel faster, and so it's going to have faster energy, faster speed, and therefore lower pressure. So you end up with a low pressure area on this side and normal pressure, or maybe whatever, it's just saying for now, normal pressure on that side. So you get a net force up. And generally here, if I went back to this stage, right, to this situation, If you think about the ball tries to go this way, well, then air is going to be rushing by on this side. You're going to have low pressure here, normal pressure here, so it's going to push it back to the middle. If the ball tried to go this way, then it's going to have faster speed on this side because the air is going to be rushing by on the left side, and so we're going to have low pressure on the left side, normal pressure on the right side, pushing it towards, back towards the middle. So that's how you can actually see the ball kind of bounce back and forth and push back to the middle all the time. And then again, you can extend this out where that low pressure can be more to the top, balance gravity. So you can actually just follow the leaf blower airstream around. It's a pretty surprising result. They even did a little shot of the gas there just to catch it, um, which doesn't always work, of course, right? Luckily, it wasn't very windy this morning. So that's my lovely, ugly Christmas sweater too, because recording this on the last day of school before Christmas. But yeah, so these links, do the same kind of thing and describe that. But I've already described a ton of it, and so here's the description or the diagrams to do with it. Right? If you have low pressure here and normal pressure. Sorry, this one's just the one that's just bouncing around. This one, the ball tried to go to the right. So we have lots of velocity on this side, so low pressure, and they have normal pressure pushing it back in. And there's the version from when it's trying to fall out from underneath. Right? So another effect that we need to look at to do with this, it's called the Magnus effect, and it's slightly different, but similar explanations. There's two versions of the explanations, though, that I'll show you. But it's very neat, and it's something I wouldn't want you to not to know about, having gone through a grade 11 physics class with me. So I just need to figure out which one I want here. The Magnus effect, amazing basketball experiment, the Magnus effect. Amazing basketball experiment, the Magnus effect. So this video here, it's the first time I saw this Magnus effect, actually. So again, I'll just describe it. But so the person drops the ball just as is first. You just see the ball fall pretty much straight down. Some wind currents there causing it to, might even be an optical illusion, but it's just falling, hitting the dam, hitting the ground, whatever. This time, he's going to drop it with some spin, and it's going to be some spin backwards, as you can see. Okay, so it's got spin this way. Okay, watch what happens. Whoa, look at that go! Clearly, he did not throw it sideways with that kind of a velocity, right? Even if the launch was a little bit on an angle or whatever, it just is insane how that works. Well, what's the explanation here for this? Okay, so we can do this. So it's called the Magnus effect. It was found, it was noticed, whatever else. But when you have a curve, when you have a spinning ball, then what happens is some of the air gets dragged around with it. Okay, and so I'll talk about curveballs and baseballs in general. This is obviously like a curveball of some sort, right? The air gets dragged around with it. Well, on this side, that drag around air is happening in the same direction air is going, and so it's increasing the speed of the air on this side, so you're getting less pressure. And then on this side, we're going against the flow, right? So we're slowing the air down, and so here we have like less kinetic energy than normal, so even actually more pressure than normal, I guess, the opposite effect, right? And so again, if we go back to the molecules, they're moving faster, and so they're going to have less of that vertical component of their push, of their velocity, and therefore less pushes into, or less hits, less energy of hits into the ball on that side. On this side, the lower sideways is going to make more of the velocity be vertical and more pressure, right? And so it explains, we have like high pressure on this side and low pressure on that side. Of course, the thing is going to, in this case, curve up, right? And that's how breaking balls, curve balls of any sort work in baseball as well. So it's very understandable. It's just weird, right? And so in baseball, there's techniques where you spin the ball as you shoot it, as you throw it, I should say, causing the different curves, right? So if we look at curve balls compared here, oh, I can actually just click on this one, I think. Yeah, it's just my channel here. So these are some curve balls, right? So there's a ball. Well, there's a track of like two different balls this pitcher was throwing, right? So two different pitches. one whips off that way, one whips that way, and it just confuses the batter. They have no idea which way that ball is going to go because of these different curves that they're able to put on the pitches. Let's go out of that one and go to the other one. So this one here, so they talk about it here, but I'm just going to show it. They have, where is it here? So there's a pitch, right? That pitch there would be a fastball. And so it is, they would consider it a riser. So it's spinning such that it's going to actually rise. But if you notice, it doesn't rise. It just doesn't fall at all, like hardly at all, right? It doesn't fall like it should. And so your brain actually tricks you into thinking that it rose up. And I'll talk about that more in a future video when I show the ping pong ball curve balls I'm going to demonstrate. But what's happening there is it's actually going to be spinning backwards a little bit as it goes, making it travel as straight as possible rather than having some downward curve, of course, because of gravity, right? Versus another pitch where he puts a curve on it that makes it drop. And it's like, boom, it just sinks like a stone, right? Comparison to these pitches, if you see that some of the pitches go straight and even actually appear to rise a little bit, and other ones just like drop off the face of the earth, you're all set to swing for it because up until this point, the effect hasn't started to happen yet, right? And so it's like all of a sudden that enough pressure difference builds up where the ball dives like crazy. And so it's like they have it's like it's a remote controlled ball, they call it, they have a string on it and they pull on it and it like pulls it down. It's like you'll hear announcers say like, oh, the pitcher's got the baseball on a string, which of course isn't true, but this is the physics of how it works, right? That's what grade 11 physics is all about, how stuff works. So if you've got different spins, different ways, we could look at if you're going to have a slice. Well, a slice would be, which way? A slice would be spinning this way. No, this way, because this way for this one, right? If you curve off, hit off, I'm not a golfer, so if you swing and you hit this side of the ball, like swinging that side, and the ball glances off that side, you're going to have a huge spin, like this. And so on the side of the golf ball, so let's have the golf ball, say here for the orange for the slice. I'll use the orange for the slice here too. I've got an orangish. So the slice ball is spinning like this, right? And again, this side's going to have the higher kinetic energy. It's going to have low pressure. This side's going to have normal pressure. It's going to push and send it off that way, right? So the names of these things, your slice and your hook, and the hook's going to be spinning the other way, obviously, and so on. And if it goes straight, they should have a name for it. They should call it a miracle. That's my golfing, anyways, right? And so here are some curve balls. You can see the other ones later too if you want. These are just pictures of videos of nasty curve balls, but the news one there already showed the kind of crazy curve. I want to show you here how you can make a curve ball with a ping pong ball. So
right, I'll show you how to make a curve ball, throw a curve ball with a ping pong ball using an elastic band. So
I'm gonna turn the volume down and just commentate it because I wasn't sure if you could hear it. Yeah, so I have a ping pong ball and I'm stretching an elastic band around and around, and then I bring it up close so you can see. So the elastic band, this quality of the video will probably get better as it processes. Because actually no, this one was fine. Anyways, it goes around like this, and so as it flings, it's going to spin the ball this way. Okay, so that ball,
elastic's going to make it spin this way. We're just going to pull air with it on this side.
So air is getting pulled with it on this side, which is meaning it's going to have a low pressure on this side, normal pressure on the other side. And when I fling this thing over towards that corner of the room, you're going to see it curve off that way because of the low pressure on the left side.
Air up, so faster on this side. And then so we're going to have lower pressure by Bernoulli's principle. And then we have normal pressure or lower pressure even.
And again, I was right there where it's actually going to have higher pressure than normal on that side, low pressure on that side. It's going to get pushed to the left, and you're going to see the result.
Pressure, higher pressure.
So here we go. Let's skip ahead.
Off that way, see a curve that way.
So watch the ball go. Right? It was going like that. It was going over to the right of the spectrum diagram or electromagnetic spectrum poster there. going that way, and then it goes, whoa, curves off that way. And then
I get my phone.
I'll show you.
Connected
I run with the phone over to the ball.
Spinning.
And it is, of course, spinning.
It's spinning so fast you can't even see it. There you go. There you go. See it slowing down.
Eventually, there you go.
Yeah.
You can see that it's spinning the way we described.
Very obvious spin.
It actually looks a little bit weird because of the frame refresh rate, the wagon wheel effect, right? But anyways, and then here's a riser. So this is a riser, right, and again, I'll just skip ahead here, but I'm spinning. I'm going to make it so that it spins with backspin. Okay, so it's going to be spinning. Wow, on my sideways view here, it's going to be spinning like this as it goes that way. And so it's going to be traveling like the left of my diagram right now. It's going to be spinning like this, so it's going to pull air with it on the tops, making low pressure, slowing things down on the bottom, making higher pressure. It's going to have force up on it. And it's going to have such a force up on it. It has such a small gravity force that I can actually make this one rise, whereas Major League Baseball, the baseballs are too heavy, they can't rise. But they just don't fall as fast as they normally would, right? So the brain tricks you into thinking that some people would swear, oh, no, it rises, but it really doesn't. And here we go soon here. Watch this ball. It's going to fling, and it's going to rise up. Sometimes I have to be careful not to make it spin too much because it literally curves up and hits the ceiling like right away, and it kind of looks like I just launched it towards the ceiling. This one I launched very much on an angle straight across the room, but you'll see it curve up and then come down. It's a little hard to see there, to be honest. Yeah, probably should redo that video eventually. But yeah, it goes like in the room when I did it, you could tell it went, and then it went up and then came down. The one I did before that I erased because it went up so much it just went woof and bounced off the ceiling. But yeah, curveballs. We understand how they work. And Mythbusters did a weird thing where they made like a golf ball dimpled car to see if it would be faster. Same idea though, theory wise. There's actually a company that does wraps called Fast Skins. They have little dimple textures in a wrap, and it actually does make cars faster a little bit. So I wouldn't be surprised if this gets incorporated into racing technology eventually, if it isn't already. You have to look at the increase in weight of the wrap, I suppose, and the effect that might have. But it's a real thing. And these ones, I'm not gonna. There's these weird rotor sails. I think we're going a little long here in the video, so I'm gonna skip those ones. You can watch those videos from YouTube if you want. But it's like how different designs of sails and so on. You have to mention the good old Bunsen burner. You know, it's a science class, physics science class, but the Bunsen burner works on air pressure as well. So the gas rushing through a restriction creates a low area, which draws air in, and it makes it the Bunsen burner able to have more complete combustion. It pulls air in. Air gets forced in by normal pressure into the low pressure area because of this restriction in this little venturi tube in here. So kudos to Robert Bunsen back in the day discovering that, making science cleaner and hotter with the Bunsen burner. So here's another explanation for the Magnus effect that I was pretty enthused about too. So Magnus effect, and I'll play 1, 2, 3 here. Another explanation that clearly makes sense, and I think it's probably a combination of both. But Magnus, and the nice thing is it's based on Newton's third law, which is something from this course, right? So here we go.
Can you fix that?
So this one isn't even as much of a spin ball, but he throws the ball, and it has this big curve to the side, right?
Hey, how did you do that? That was a hard one because this ball's a little bit magic. It's got a bit of string glued to the left side of it.
So what happens is the string on the left side causes turbulence, and so then that layer of air stays onto the ball quicker, sticks onto the ball longer, and swoops out the back. And then the description is the air swooping out the back and going that way. So there must have been a force on the air that way. Then in Newton's third law, reaction force would be on the ball the other way, right? And so there's He's going to show here the idea of the tail getting kicked off that way. And so there's a force that way, and then the Newton's third law reaction force is the way you saw it curve. Okay, so that's another explanation of why that happens. And so in a curve ball, same kind of
why is it that
same thing's going to happen, right? You're going to have a curve, and it's going to pull there. So my description was it's true too, but I mean, this is going to drag air with it and speed it up. So it's going to be going faster, therefore lower pressure, as we've described. And down here, slower, so they're higher pressure. So you're going to push upwards on the page from this diagram. Whereas the other description would be like this air gets pulled with it and then kicked that way. Well, if air gets kicked that way, then the ball gets kicked the other way. I think it's a combination effect of pressures and third law, to be honest. I'd like to see more investigation into that. But yeah, so it's going to talk about, there's a push on the air to the downward direction on this picture. Therefore, the third law reaction force on the ball the other way. So the final path of the ball, this guy throws a curve ball here, shows his curve ball is pretty good. And he's actually using curve ball throwing techniques. And so you can see the ball is clearly curving off to the right in the video, right? Very much through it this way. So it's flying this way, and then it dives off the other way, right? They're trying to show something there. But yeah, what's this one doing? This is another one. I think he does a different spin effect, and he makes curves it the other way, I think. This one, I think he put a spin on it. Yeah, to curve the other way. This happens when a semi-pro baseball player retires and becomes a teacher, I think, a physics teacher. But he would have had this one spinning. We want to have a low pressure on this side, right? So it's going to be spinning this way, like three-dimensionally this way, pulling air with it, speeding it up, right? Or you could say pulling that tail and kicking the air out that way, therefore having a third law reaction kick to the left, right? So it's spinning off to the left. But yeah, both descriptions are logical and I would say are true. It's just double effect having the same result. Here's the actual wind tunnel look. So the air getting pulled down, kicking the ball the other way. Okay, so slowed down immensely here, but that spin would have been much faster, of course, in real life. Be able to direct that airflow down and therefore kick the ball that way. But you can also talk about how this air is going faster and therefore less velocity kick vertically, less pressure as well. So if we could put pressure sensors and force sensors and so on to be able to measure this stuff. But the desire to measure it is based on the knowledge of it, so that's good enough for me for now, right? So which is it? Is it the Magnus effect or is it the Bernoulli's principle? And be like, kind of think of it as the same. I used to think of the Magnus effect as just because of the Bernoulli's principle, really, but it's this third law kick, right? Well, maybe it's both, right? So that is the Bernoulli's principle. Basically, questions for this one. I don't have any practice questions for it, but you should be able to describe this kind of thing, right? Like what's going to happen between the balloons and why, and so all of these things are sample questions. Just be able to describe all the things, why spin makes it curve, and so on. For the spin curve, I'd be hoping you'd be able to do both descriptions. The increase in pressure. So in here, we've got more kinetic energy, right? Increase in speed, therefore lower pressure. So that is low pressure. And then down here, we could describe even the opposite. But even just if we had low pressure and even just normal pressure, you've got a net force up, right? We've got net force up. We've got the small force down, the low pressure, and plus the normal or high pressure. And obviously, you're going to get a net force up. And then the other description here, of course, is that third law reaction force, right? So I'm thinking that's pretty good fundamental physics knowledge that I'd like you to be able to show me on the assessment. Cool. All right. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully you found some of that interesting. And yeah. I will talk to you later. Thanks for watching. And I feel like saying Merry Christmas, have a good holiday, even though you're probably not watching this one on that day. But, it's the day, so it's the theme. So there you go. Talk to you later.